Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of Swallow the Stars. This will be part 13, chapter 13, entitled The Second Problem Child. Honestly, Shoda should have known that Izuku would take the casual couple of weeks time limit far too seriously. 2 weeks exactly since the start of the term, Izuku comes home and says that Shinso definitely wants to be trained by Shoda, and the next day he's getting a call from a woman he's never met. "Are you Aizawa Shoda, Izuku-kun's dad?" Shoda reins in a sigh and sags into his desk in the teacher's lounge. He had literally just finished filling out the expulsion papers for 3 students, and he's really too tired to be dealing with any more bullshit. "If Izuku did something at school, call his other dad." The woman on the other side of the phone laughs, not an unpleasant sound. No, I don't work at the school. Sorry, I should have led with this. I'm Shinso Keita, Hitoshi's mom." Ah, better than Izuku punching another kid, but if her tone is anything to go by, Shoda's about to get himself another problem child to look after. At least this one has parents and thus won't need to be adopted. "Shinso-san, what can I help you with?" "Please, just call me Keita. Everyone does." A pause, and then Shoda slots the expulsion forms into a folder to make them easier to deliver to Nezu. "I'm calling because Hitoshi had mentioned that you'd be willing to train him to be a hero, and I'm just wondering exactly what that entails." A responsible mother who cares about her son. Good. Shoda deals with enough shitty and unreasonable parents for his job. He doesn't want to be mitigating a bad family life for the first friend that Izuku's ever made. Well, second, if the kid from the street festival counts. He's sure that it counts to Izuku, but Shoda thinks a couple of checks a month at most doesn't really fit under the umbrella of friendship, but what the hell does he know? "Perhaps we should start with what you've already been told, Keita-san," Shoda suggests, "and then I can fill in the details, and you can decide if you're okay with it." That earns him a light laugh, and almost sounds like a little relief. "Well, Hitoshi and my husband both tell me that you're a pro-hero, so I'm not too concerned," she says. "Hitoshi wants to be a hero, but I'm afraid everyone in his life outside of our family has told him that's impossible. Apparently not kindly either. He's expressed interest in self-defense classes when he was younger, but when I asked him about it last year, he said he didn't want to anymore." She sighs, and Shoda waits patiently for her to continue. "You know, I should be thanking you, Aizawa-san." "I haven't done anything yet," Shoda says, leaning back in his chair and closing his eyes against the overhead lights. "I disagree," Keita-san says kindly. "You raised Izuku. That boy has done more for Hitoshi's self-confidence and general happiness than anyone, and I'm including myself in that statistic. And that's with them only knowing each other for a couple of weeks." Shoda would argue that whatever Izuku's doing, it has nothing to do with how he's been raised, but Keita-san doesn't give him a chance to. "Hitoshi explained to me last night that Izuku's training to be a hero under your guidance, that he's going through physical conditioning and learning how to defend himself. He said that you extended an offer to teach him as well, alongside Izuku." "I did do that," Shoda agrees, and he's already wondering if he's going to regret it. One problem child is enough for a lifetime. And what he saw in Shinso for the first few minutes they shared a room was a child who was more than willing to take a beating if it meant not getting in trouble. A child who'd been failed by adults so thoroughly that he stopped asking for help. He sighs. "If your son wants to get into UA, he has a long path ahead of him. UA's entrance exam is designed to showcase physical combative quirks, something that Shinso-kun does not have. But it also is 2 years away. I can teach him to defend himself, get his body and mind in shape so that he doesn't fold under the pressure, literally and figuratively. If he wants help with his quirk, I can do that as well, although Izuku has apparently taken that task to heart already." Keita-san laughs again. "Yes, Hitoshi told me all about the 2-page analysis that Izuku wrote about his quirk. He reads it every night, which is so refreshing. He'd never admit it, but he's always been afraid of his quirk for years. I think if quirks were physical things, he would have wanted it removed from him." Wincing, because that hits a little close to home for him, Shoda sits back up again, just to lean forward over the desk, supporting himself on his elbows. "Izuku used to be afraid of his quirk, too. He's a recent addition to my life, actually, so I can't take credit for how he's treating your son. That's just who he is." "Well, he's a good kid, and I can say that with confidence. Having never even met him, Hitoshi talks about him like he hangs the stars in the sky, though he'd never admit it out loud." Yeah, Shoda can understand that. It's nearly impossible to dislike Izuku after talking to him for a little while. He's bright in more ways than one. "How about this, Keita-san?" he says, steering them back to the purpose of the call. "I'll work on a training menu for Shinso-kun today, and I'll pick up the problem children at school and bring Shinso-kun home, and we can discuss it more there. I think it might be more beneficial for everyone if there was something concrete to work with instead of just an abstract idea." "That would be great, Aizawa-san." Her tone clearly gives away that she's smiling. "I'll have tea ready when you get here. Thank you for taking my call." "I would have called you anyway," Shoda says, "but I'm glad that you reached out first. It really does alleviate his concerns over a potential bad home life if Shinso's parents are actively listening, engaging with, and worried about their son's social life and aspirations. Then that's less work for Shoda to do. They say their goodbyes, and then Shoda hangs up and puts his face on his desk. Of course, Hasashi chooses that moment to walk in through the door of the teacher's lounge. "Are you sleeping or having a bad day?" Hasashi asks, and doesn't sound concerned at all. "Bad life," Shoda answers, groaning when Hasashi laughs at him. "Not even taking my pain seriously. Such a great friend you are." Sorry. Hasashi doesn't sound sorry, but he pulls up a chair next to Shoda and pats his shoulder. Shoda doesn't pull away. "What happened?" He pushes the folder toward Hasashi and doesn't care if he opens it or not. "I'm expelling 3 more students. These 3 can go down to the Gen Ed, though. I don't care. If you want them, you can have them, but they're going to get themselves killed before they can get their licenses with the way that they're going. Why can't kids ever take this shit fucking seriously? Why are they all so insistent on finding themselves on the wrong side of a collapsed building or pushing themselves to quirk exhaustion and further? And why is he the only teacher in the school willing to do something about it?" As soon as Nezu approves of the expulsion forms, which he always does, this'll make 7 expelled students from 1A already this year. Part of him always feels like an asshole about it because they're kids and they have dreams and he's the one giving them just a tiny taste of death, but on the other hand, he would rather them die and still be able to make friends and go to school than be a name in a newspaper with grieving parents and friends who don't know how to move on after almost 20 years. Fuck. "And we're getting another problem child," Shoda adds. "Izuku's friend wants me to train him, which is fine for now, but when their training starts getting more intense, I'm going to need your help with Izuku while I focus on Shinso." Izashi's brow quirks up, above the frame of his tinted glasses. "Have you told that to Izuku yet?" Shoda's not really surprised that Izashi sees through his reasoning for the change well enough that he doesn't have to ask about it. A lot of people meet Hasashi and assume that there isn't a lot of thinking happening with him. He's loud and buoyant, and they assume that it stops at that, but Shoda knows better. "No, but it's not like he's going to be mad about it. Shinso's quirk and personality is suited for underground heroics. And yes, I'm saying that based on the notes I've read in Izuku's notebook. And no, I'm not sorry for snooping on what he writes outside of what he hands to me for his assignments. But unless Shinso turns into a brawler type once he gets going, it'll be easier for me to just teach him how to use a capture weapon like mine. But Izuku..." He sighs. Izuku's a problem child, an enigma, several inconsistencies wrapped up in a trench coat. But Hisashi understands. Izuku's either going to be fist-fighting or using his quirk, yeah. They've both seen Izuku's scars, the perfectly straight lines from surgeries and the imperfect splotches from what Izuku only recently admitted to being broken bones caused by his quirk. Aizawa had known that they were from severely broken bones at the very first night that he brought Izuku home, but he'd thought it was abuse from the workers at the research facility. He was wrong. Izashi leans back, in his stolen chair, his hand still resting on Shoda's shoulder. "Yeah, I can work with him more on the quirk. That thing still scares the fuck out of me, though." Shoda thinks about silent conversations between Izuku and that god inside of him. Thinks about open palms and a black mark that bleeds red and a red mark that bleeds black. Thinks about a frightened boy, sitting in the rain, and a monster, dark and roiling and massive, ripping its way out of his skin. He thinks about claws that are too long and gouges in pavement. Thinks about 2 human beings crushed so completely that they vaporized into a fine mist of blood and the occasional chunk of flesh. He thinks about Izuku standing on the beach, backlit by the sun, a strange dark shadow hovering over his shoulder and pointing a long claw toward the next object to crush. Sometimes he thinks it's a trick of the light. Other times he's not so sure. "Yeah," he agrees. "It scares me too." For the rest of his lunch hour, Shoda works on a training menu for Shinso. It's the most basic set of instructions he can think of, roughly where he started with Izuku last year. Morning runs, simple exercises, just building up muscle for more intense training to follow. He adds a note at the end, sparring, and makes sure to bring it up with the boys later. Izuku's sturdy and a heavy hitter, and Shinso reminds Shoda of himself at that age, tall and lithe and prone to dodging, and short sprints. Stamina can be built, but Shoda's curious where the kid's natural talents lay. He also texts Izuku about picking them up, making sure the 2 boys wait for him instead of splitting off immediately when the last bell rings. Izuku's excited reply makes Shoda smile despite everything. At the end of the day, Shoda drops off the folder of expulsion papers with Nezu and then leaves. The middle school is only a 10-minute train ride from UA, chosen specifically for the quick ride from the apartment, and the even quicker ride from where Shoda and Hisashi spend their days. You can never be too careful, in Shoda's opinion. There are certainly villains around with vendettas against both of them, and if those villains decide to take it out on Izuku, well, he just hopes that doesn't happen. He hasn't heard anything from Izuku about continued bullying, but he's still pleasantly surprised to see both Izuku and Shinso looking whole and healthy when he walks up to the school gate. Izuku's the first to see him, adequately aware of his surroundings after Shoda spent a full week ambushing him in their apartment with a capture weapon. "Hi, Dad," Izuku calls with a big sweeping wave of his arm above his head. Shinso leans away from the motion, giving Izuku a side-eye like he's been knocked into by excitement before and isn't looking forward to round 2. That thought almost makes Shoda smirk. Kid's got a whole thing coming if he's going to be able to avoid bruises forever. "Stop that," Shinso says, poking Izuku's cheek. "You're like a fucking glow stick." Izuku sticks his tongue out, that's new, and affixes a glare at Shinso. "Someone has to balance out your gloomy ass." Shoda has to hide a smile in his capture weapon. He's pretty sure Hasashi said almost that exact same thing to him when they were teenagers. "Problem children," he says, getting their attention so they don't stand here outside of school grounds for the rest of the night. "I've been promised tea. Let's get a move on." "Oh, did Mom bribe you?" Shinso asks, taking the initiative to step forward first. Izuku falls in beside him immediately, and Shoda hangs back a little as they start walking toward the station. "She has all these weird-ass teas that she buys from the organic store down the road. They're good, but don't tell her I said that." "She didn't have to bribe me," Shoda says. He puts his hands in his pockets as he observes his son and his son's friend from the back, watching the way that they share the space like they've known each other far longer than 2 weeks. "It was my idea to meet tonight. I'm sure she was just being polite. But if it had been a bribe, it likely would have worked. Shoda only drinks coffee because it's more efficient of a way to get caffeine into his system. He far prefers the taste of tea." Shinso pulls out his phone as they walk, and Shoda makes an immediate mental note to put in situational awareness lessons into his training as soon as possible. After a moment, Shinso snorts a laugh and leans over into Izuku's side, who glances at the screen and laughs a moment later. Wait, Izuku says, reaching for the phone. "Show Dad. He loves cats." An embarrassed flush makes quick work of warming Shinso's cheeks, but he immediately slows down and holds out the phone to him. Shoda does the kid a favor and doesn't mention or call attention to his embarrassment. Teasing can come later after they actually know each other. For now, Shoda can let him fanboy in peace, even if it's weird that Shoda even has a fan. That's incredibly rare for an underground hero. A cat meme is pulled up on the screen, and Shoda reads it quickly before huffing a laugh through his nose. Izuku bursts out laughing at the reaction and pulls Shinso by the arm back to his original position. "He thought it was funny, don't worry," Izuku assures his still blushing friend. The ease at which the two have become close would worry Shoda if he wasn't achingly familiar with how it feels to finally have a friend after so long without one. They fit themselves together out of fear of their own quirks and a mutual understanding of what it means to be ostracized for the perceived danger that they hold. Their circumstances couldn't be more different, but they've both known pain and loneliness. Shoda's just glad that they found each other and can still smile despite all the shit that's happened to them. It's a 15-minute train ride to Shinso's stop, and an additional 10-minute walk to the neighborhood before they're at a nice 2-story house. Shinso lets himself in with a key. "Mom, I'm home with company," he calls into the open door. Shoda's a bit surprised he can raise his voice so much, given how quiet his normal speaking tone is. He steps inside after the boys and makes sure to lock the door when he closes it behind himself. Shinso takes off his shoes and walks further in. There aren't any slippers present, so Shoda and Izuku follow suit and wander in after him. The household is what Shoda can only describe as controlled chaos. It's messy in a way that looks used, but not filthy. The floor and surfaces are clean from dirt and dust, but toys and blankets and pillows are tossed around almost everywhere. Framed photographs and art pieces cover the walls. This is a well-loved and well-lived-in home, fit around people who are here often and comfortable within. If there had been any remaining unease about Shinso's living conditions, it relaxes out of Shoda immediately. The boy clearly has a good family life, even if the school system had let him down immensely. In the kitchen comes a response that can only be from Keita-san. "Haruki, don't run!" A child who's young runs around the corner and slams Shinso with a hug around his legs. Clearly a younger sister, judging by her purple hair, although it's lilac instead of violet. Shoda thinks she can't be older than 6. "Mama made senbi," she says as she pulls away, her soft amber eyes lit up with glee. She looks past Shinso at Izuku first, then at Shoda. "Who are they?" Shoda notices that Izuku's frozen up a bit. He makes a mental note to bring that up in conversation later at home, so he steps forward first, crouching down to be closer to the girl's level. "I'm Aizawa. This is Izuku." He puts a hand on Izuku's shoulder and squeezes, offering reassurance if needed. Izuku gives him a small but grateful smile and seems to shake himself out of it, whatever it is. "You must be Haruki-chan." The smile he gives the girl is warm, the moment of stiffness and uncertainty cast aside. "Your brothers told me all about you. You make flowers, right?" The girl nods, not at all reserved around the strangers in her house. "Oni-chan talks about you too. He says you're really nice to him, so I like you." She puts her hands behind her back, and when she brings them forward, small yellow flowers with thin stems are grasped in her fist. For you! She seems to have only one volume, loud, which Shoda finds both amusing and headache-inducing. Haruki, dear, go keep your Oni-san company for a while. A woman comes around the corner, tall and slender, wiping her hands on a dish rag. She looks like she's been in the kitchen for a while. Flour on her shirt, dark blue hair pulled back into a bun, few smudges on her glasses, and Shoda understands without introductions that this is Keita-san. The girl pouts but does as her mother says. Bye-bye, Oni-chan, Izu-chan, Aizawa-san. And with a twirl that's almost too fast, she fumbles over her legs and races down a hall and presumably, given the stomping that follows, up a flight of stairs. Shoda raises himself back to standing and gives a short bow. You must be Keita-san. She smiles at him and bows in return. Sorry for the mess. There's only so much time in a day. Shinso snorts at that for whatever reason, and Keita-san swats him with the dish rag. None of that from you, young man. She turns to Izuku, then, orange, eyes are glittering. Izuku-kun, it's so nice to finally meet you. I'm Keita. Hitoshi talks about you a lot. Mom. Don't worry, Shoda says, giving a pointed look to Shinso. Izuku talks about you just as much. Dad! Children thoroughly embarrassed, Shoda turns his attention back to Keita-san. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Oh, of course. Keita-san slings the dishcloth over her shoulder and turns around. I've cleared off the table. We can talk there. She leads them all to a small dining room just off of the kitchen, in an open concept. There's already a platter of the aforementioned food in the middle of the table, and as Shoda, Shinso, and Izuku all take their seats, she brings out a tray of tea and sets that down as well. Then she sits beside her son and folds her hands. Shoda gets right down to business. He pulls out the folded training menu from his pocket, unfolds it, and slides it across the table so that both Keita-san and Shinso can see it. I made this during my lunch break, he says, to explain away some of the crossed-out items and notes on the side that probably could only make sense to him. I'll make 'em for molkabe tonight and send it to school with Izuku tomorrow if you both agree to it. Shinso picked up the paper first, holding it close as he reads over it before passing it to Keita-san. It looks pretty basic. And you look like a limp noodle, Shoda says, eyebrow raised. If you expected to jump right into the cool fun sparring, you picked the wrong teacher. Shinso frowns at the insult, but he doesn't say anything else. That menu is something that you'll follow on your own. For the first month at least, you're going to be turning in an exercise journal to me every week so that I can make adjustments to it as necessary, increasing or decreasing the difficulty as needed. The journal needs to be honest, or else the changes I make can seriously damage your body. Is that understood? Shoda knows that he's using his teacher voice, but it's still amusing to watch Shinso go from a relaxed and slightly slouched posture to ramrod straight and proper. Perfectly. Good. The purpose of the menu is twofold. First, to get you used to the concept of exercising on your own. I'm assuming the only time you exercise at present is during gym class at school. It's not a question, but Shinso nods anyway. The second part is actually to make you stronger. Your menu right now is very similar to the menu I gave Izuku when he first started training, so if you're having questions or struggling and you don't feel comfortable reaching out to me yet, you can reach out to him, but, he says, eyes narrowing slightly, the moment I start adjusting your menu, you have to come to me, because it's going to be different from what Izuku has done. Keita-san leans forward, grabbing a senbei to nibble on. Why is that? She asked, genuinely curious. Honestly, they are tempting-looking. Shoda stares at them for a full 3 seconds before grabbing one and taking a bite. Sweet, but not too sweet. If Hasashi were here, they would be going home with the recipe. They're different people, he answers honestly. Izuku's shorter and a stamina monster. His build is narrow, but his muscle is compact, not ropey. Looking at Shinso now, I'm guessing he's going to be built more like me, which is to say a flexible sprinter. His punches are probably never going to hit as hard as Izuku's, but he'll be faster in close quarters and over short distances. Izuku's a close-range fighter with a long-range quirk. I think Shinso is going to be a mid-range fighter with a mid-range quirk, so their menus will be individualized. That sounds like a lot of trouble on your end. Keita-san says she's keeping an eye on him, and Shoda's not really sure if he can read her expression. He imagines that having more than one child makes her good at hiding what she's thinking. Why put in so much effort? Shoda shrugs with one shoulder. I've expelled 7 students from my homeroom as of today, so that's 7 less papers to grade, 7 less students to worry about after hours. Making a training menu with the information Shinso gives me won't take all that much time. Izuku looks at him, a frown pulling at his mouth. 3 more of them? His fingers tap against the side of his cup. I'm sorry. Shoda sets his hand on top of Izuku's head, not ruffling his hair, just giving him a little comfort. Don't be sorry. They were the ones not taking the course seriously. Izuku makes a face but doesn't say anything else, so Shoda takes his hand back and returns his attention to Keita-san. As for why, UA has a bias for flashy physical quirks. It's not a secret. It's just something you have to actually notice in order to figure it out. When I was a student, I slipped through the cracks at first because of that bias, and it wasn't until I won the sports festival that anyone gave me the time of day. It bothers me that they're still like this. Shinso's quirk is perfectly suited to heroics, and as long as he's determined to put in the effort, I'm not going to let an archaic standard make UA miss out on so much potential. Do you really mean that? Shinso asked, suddenly choked up and a little breathless. And Shoda gets it, because it's one thing to have another kid tell you that you can be a hero, and completely another thing to have a pro say the same thing. Yeah, kid. I really do. Keita-san's gaze softens. She reaches out to Shinso, gently rubbing his arm. I think this is a good idea, but, she looks back at Shoda, I have a feeling you aren't finished laying out the terms yet. Shoda inclines his head. After sipping at his tea, continues. On Friday nights, and building up into early Saturday afternoons as well, I'd like Shinso to join us for more focused training. It'll start basic, but should evolve within the first month into sparring and quirk control, eventually probably next year, depending upon if his fighting style changes. I want to teach him how to use a capture weapon, like mine. He tugs on the fabric around his neck. It's hard work. It's all hard work. You're going to be sore all the time for the next 2 years. There are probably going to be days where you want to quit completely. It's not all sunshine and rainbows when you're training to be a pro. Hell, it's not even when you are a pro. So, it's up to you if you think that it's worth it. But if you call it off, I won't take you back if you change your mind, and you have to find your own way into UA. Oh, he adds almost as an afterthought. And if your grades drop at all, we're done. I want to do it. Shinso says the moment that he realizes that Shoda isn't going to say anything else. Mom, can I? Shinso doesn't strike Shoda as the type of kid to beg and plead, but the look he gives to Keita-san is probably his version of puppy eyes, even if Shoda can't tell the difference right now. Keita-san assesses Shinso for a moment, then looks back at Shoda, then Izuku, then back to Shoda. Yes, she says. All right. Please keep in contact with me about his progress, because I'm sure he won't give me or Asahi any actual updates on how it's going. Both Izuku and Shinso let out relieved sighs, and the smile Izuku gives is blinding. I do have a question about the Friday night training, though. How late does it run? Fairly late, Shoda admits. Friday and Saturday are the only times I'm guaranteed to not have to do any grading or early evening patrols. I would be more than willing to accompany Shinso home afterwards, though. Can he just spend the night? Izuku asks, looking between Shoda and Keita-san. Then we can study together for some of Saturday, too. Keita-san smiles. Oh, that's a lovely idea, actually, if it doesn't impose. Shoda shakes his head. Not at all. We have a spare futon that Shinso can borrow if he wants to sleep in Izuku's room. Otherwise, the sofa's quite comfortable, speaking from experience. With all that settled, and a second problem child officially added to Shoda's very short list of kids under his care, the rest of the visit is casual and relaxed. Haruki resurfaces at some point, dragging an older boy around 15 or 16 years old with her so that they can grab some of the food before racing away. Shoda notices the way Izuku stares at the boy's shaved hair with something like intrigue and want, but he doesn't say anything. If Izuku wants a haircut, he just has to ask. But they're still working on the whole asking for things thing, and he suspects the topic won't come up for a while. Shoda really hopes Izuku doesn't shave his whole head, though. But it's just hair, if he wants to, and decides that he doesn't like the style, it'll grow back. The piercings, however, work hazards. At some point, there has to be a line drawn, and Shoda will put his foot down on personal safety. After they finish their tea, Shoda and Izuku take their leave. Izuku chatters the whole way home, and Shoda diligently divides his attention between listening, taking in their surroundings, thinking about the next few months. There are a lot of variables that he's going to be juggling. One thing's for sure, though. Both of the kids now under his care are going to make damn fine heroes someday. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 13 of Swallow the Stars. Chapter 14 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.